It'll be a dry and a bright day once we've lost the morning mist and fog, but some heavy showers across the southeast. Temperatures here could reach 12 Celsius for most, 10 or 11 degrees. The wind's fairly light though, so probably feeling a touch warmer than today. A touch of frost returns though on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and Wednesday looking fairly grey again in eastern areas with a few light showers possible, and many western areas dry and bright with some decent spells of sunshine. Temperatures again where it's grey 8 or 9 with a bit of sunshine 11 or 12.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
How much they are going for?
And you said 9,000?
Yes. If you are ready to do this.
Is a dodgy, unqualified immigrant coming round to your elderly relative's house? Plus.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims.
George Galloway says the quiet bit out loud, and the Archbishop of Canterbury and other woke nutters vote down Rwanda. Also, Labour's Shadow Culture Secretary slams Rule Britannia. On my panel tonight, it's Express columnist Carol Malone, trade unionist Andy MacDonald and ex-Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucio. And what happens next here? Get ready, Britain, here we go. Are your loved ones being cared for by a foreign con artist? Next.
Good evening. At 9:01, I'm Polly Middlehurst. Well, our top story today is the government has suffered a string of defeats to its flagship immigration policy, the Rwanda Bill, in the House of Lords tonight. Peers have been voting variously in favour of monitoring mechanisms which would ensure safeguards in the bill would be fully implemented and making sure the bill is fully compliant with international and domestic law. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more being voted on Wednesday. Well, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, previously warned the Lords against frustrating the will of the people by hampering the passage of his Safety of Rwanda Bill. Meanwhile, a record 385 migrants crossed the English Channel today. That's the largest number on a single day this year. GB News understands a seventh small boat crossed into UK waters this evening, carrying 49 migrants. It follows 6 other boats carrying 336 people, which were intercepted by Border Force officials earlier on today. And yesterday, the Home Office recorded 327 people arriving in the UK after making the journey in 8 small boats, suggesting an average of around 41 migrants per boat. The Chancellor says he wants to move the UK to a lower tax economy, but will only do so in a responsible way. Jeremy Hunt was visiting a new digital engineering plant in Wiltshire, where he also announced a £360 million funding boost for manufacturing. Income tax has reached an historic high, and whilst he's promised some tax cuts, the Chancellor has also been trying to manage expectations ahead of Wednesday's budget. Newly elected Rochdale MP George Galloway was sworn into Parliament today. The Workers' Party of Britain leader pledged allegiance to the King as part of the ceremony after winning last week's Rochdale by-election by more than 5,500 votes. Speaking today, he said, "It's my job to try to make Rochdale great again." And Donald Trump has cleared another hurdle in his bid for the US presidency after a Supreme Court victory today. The ruling means the Republican candidate will appear on the ballot on Tuesday's Colorado primary vote. The justices unanimously reversed a decision by the state of Colorado to exclude him from the ballot following accusations about the Capitol riots in 2021. The RNLI is celebrating saving more than 146,000 lives today as it marks its 200th anniversary. The Duke of Kent was among those attending a service of thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey, during which the Archbishop of Canterbury praised volunteers as models for everyone who risk their lives for people they don't even know. The Royal National Lifeboat Institution was founded in a pub 200 years ago as a service to save ships and crew from dangerous coastlines. Those are the main stories. For the very latest, do sign up to GB News Alert. Scan that QR code on your screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. There is a massive scandal here. Is a dodgy, unqualified immigrant working in your loved one's care home or even coming round to their house every day? There is a deadly cottage industry of people paying thousands of pounds to crooks to lie their way into Britain. Britain's care homes and the actual homes of the elderly and infirm. Here is undercover footage obtained by the Mail showing a Baptist minister asking for £9,000 in cash to guarantee that a woman with no qualifications can become a home carer in the North East.
The price already.
Yeah, just wanted to go over it.
How much they are coming for?
And you said 9,000?
Yes. If you are ready to do it.
And what kind of works?
Domiciliary care.
Domiciliary care?
Yes.
What do I need to provide to start the process?
You give me money today, you send me the CV.
Okay.
They will tell you for you to go through normal procedures.
Okay, do I have to pay everything up front? And I obviously don't have anything to worry about with the Home Office.
It's a complete company.
I suspect this will be happening everywhere. Here are the sickening facts. We had 164,000 care home vacancies in 2021, apparently. The government then relaxed the entry rules to make it easier for immigrants to work in the care sector. Britain granted 337,240 work visas in 2023, 26% higher than in 2022. This includes 146,500 health and social care visas. That is apparently a 91% increase on the previous year. They also brought their dependents with them. 73% of family visas were reportedly for people working in the health and social care sector. That's around 204,000 people. How many of these are dodgy? Companies need to sponsor care workers to be granted a visa. Some of these companies are bogus, with copy and paste websites, fake-looking reviews and PO boxes as addresses. Some companies have never filed accounts and are only a few months old. At least 268 companies that have never been inspected by the Care Quality Commission have also been granted licences. Others appear to have been granted licences by the Home Office despite not being registered with the watchdog at all. The Home Office issued 275 visas to a care home that didn't even exist. This was revealed in a report written by David Neal, who was appointed as the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. What happened? Well, he was sacked, wasn't he? Possibly because he didn't keep his mouth shut. We already have a total scandal of patients dying in some cases because foreign care home staff, unable to speak English properly, can't explain their symptoms to 999 call handlers. What kind of life have the elderly and most vulnerable people in society got if they can't even understand their own carers? And now it turns out that loads of those carers won't even be qualified. They are literally just random foreign people who have paid thousands of pounds to a criminal to lie their way into Britain, and they've probably brought their families with them as well. But this is the government's fault and nobody else's. Instead of training more British care workers and paying them more money, they decided to just flood the market with cheap foreign labour. And by the way, they're about to do it with teachers as well. Overseas applications for teacher training have doubled this year in an unprecedented increase after ministers began a recruitment drive in countries like Nigeria and India and offered £10,000 payments for foreign teachers to come to Britain. But back to the care sector. It makes me sick that this is how we treat our greatest generation, our elderly, our most vulnerable. People who have paid their tax all their lives, worked hard, done the right thing. And bear in mind that only about 1% of abuse claims in care homes actually result in a conviction, so they've got that against them as well. Nothing sums up our broken immigration system more than somebody with no qualifications whatsoever being given the key to an elderly dementia sufferer's own home. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. I am joined this evening by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. I've got trade unionist Andy MacDonald and, of course, the ex-Brexit Party MEP Belinda Delucy. Carol, is our immigration policy putting the most vulnerable at risk?
Oh, completely. What you just said. You know, it gets me in this country that, you know, we're supposed to be a compassionate society, and yet we treat the most vulnerable and the frailest people in our society so very badly. It's what you just said there. You know, when you go into a care home, it's bad enough that you're away from your family and your friends and all the rest of it. Then you're looked after by migrant care workers, many of whom have come here illegally in the sense that they've paid for their visas. We saw that Baptist minister. I cannot believe that Baptist minister saying to someone, "You've got to pay me £9 grand." Anyway, we should name him, shouldn't we? Did we name him? He's called the Reverend Philip. I can't pronounce it. Oyewale, yes. And the most vulnerable in our society, and you just said it in your intro there, they're not understood by the people caring for them. You know, to be a carer, I think you have to be a very special kind of person. You have to have compassion, you have to have time, you have to have understanding. These people will
You also have to have qualifications.
Well, of course.
Which is the key point.
Well, that goes without saying. But you know, even if you didn't have qualifications, if you were all of those things, that would kind of be okay-ish, but it's not. It means that our people are... And, you know, it's no coincidence that the instances of abuse in care homes has gone up hugely in the past 2 or 3 years, where families now have to put cameras in because there's stories about their loved ones are telling them they've been abused, shoved about, whatever.
OK. Andy, for me, the fault here is directly with the Home Office. Instead of training and paying British workers more to do these jobs, they've accepted the trope that British individuals can't be bothered to work in a care home, and so they've just outsourced it to a load of countries and then not bothered to actually check if these people are qualified?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I don't think it's just the Home Office, it's also the wider government. The Department for Education would be responsible for the training. But, you know, you look at the Home Office, we've had 5 Home Secretaries in 5 years. This is clearly not a government that takes it seriously. And, you know, looking at the wider health and social care sector, we can see that migrants have a net benefit in the NHS, for example. We've got some fantastic migrant qualified doctors and nurses that are the backbone of the NHS. So when we do it properly, it works quite well. But it's just ridiculous that this bloke has been allowed to get away with this, seemingly.
Yeah. Belinda, I mean, this, to be honest with you, makes me feel sick. We've got our most vulnerable and our greatest generation. And this isn't just about care homes. This is about domicile care. This is about someone letting themselves in to your mum or dad's house or your grandma or granddad's house, OK, to care for them on a daily basis and potentially not only not speaking a word of English, but not actually being a carer.
The Home Office, the government, the Treasury, they've given up on Britain. They've given up on British workers. They've given up on our workforce. I don't know why they're called the Home Office, because it seems to be more of an international office, how to use and abuse this country more than anything for its own people. I find it immoral to constantly strip poorer countries anyway of their workforce rather than train our own, but they seem to be happy to do that. They've put the public at risk, patients at risk, elderly at risk. They do not care because all they want is a quick fix to their failed policies. It's an outrage.
It is really. Now, Carol, I'll just move it over to you on this for the moment, which is that, you know, if you are old and you've maybe got some other kind of issue there, right, it is difficult enough at times to understand.
Oh, God,
someone,
yes.
OK?
Yes.
And they get called all of these things. Oh, gosh, you know, that old person must be so racist because they couldn't understand what this person was saying, despite the fact that we've seen people failing to alert 999 properly to someone's symptoms. That person died because that individual didn't have a good enough grasp at the English language. The bare minimum that they could do is do us the courtesy, this government, of making sure that the people in that position actually had qualifications.
You know, what's happening? The Home Office is, and you pointed out in your intro there, that at least 268 companies that were granted visas weren't even checked out by the Quality Care Commission. That's what they exist for God's sake.
Yeah.
And the Home Office gave 1,234 visas to a company that only had 4 staff. If that's not a bogus company, I don't know what is. And so they don't care. But, you know, this story is not new. This is what annoys me. The Guardian ran a story in July last year about the migrants coming over and getting dodgy visas.
Yep.
The government has known about it, was presented with a report before Christmas. It's done nothing.
They don't
about
care,
it.
Patrick.
They really don't care. And, you know, they're saying we'll deal with it now. Are they going to arrest that Baptist minister? Are they going to arrest the people in these companies?
They certainly won't deport anyone.
Well, no, but the companies that have admitted that they're lying to the Home Office to get visas, some of those companies get the visas that don't even provide home care. They just sell the visas. But that's a criminal offence. And the Home Office is doing it knowing exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
Look, obviously, this particular Baptist minister is not here to defend himself, and maybe...
Doesn't have to be, we just heard him.
Yeah, I know, maybe he denies anything.
I know you've got to say that, but we just heard him.
Is this time now that people do fundamentally wake up to the fact that we are being completely and utterly conned here by some illegal migrants, by a cottage industry, whether it's lawyers fabricating asylum claims, whether it's the church baptising people who sometimes go up to blow themselves up outside a maternity hospital in Liverpool, or whether it's people here who are fake carers being allowed into people's homes? Is it time that the government just admitted all of this and everyone admitted it, even the people on the left?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There needs to be a serious review into the migration system in this country to make sure that the people that want to come here and actually contribute can, and the ones that won't will be kept out. But the thing is this, it's the same across construction, manufacturing, wider health and social care. There is a vacancy crisis. It's, you know, 12-hour shifts on minimum wage. Who would want to do that? You know, we need to improve the pay.
I get that, but does that not then sort itself out if we actually stop importing cheap foreign labour, we stop relying on it, we stop using this lazy, I would argue, racial trope that Brits don't want to do these jobs, and we actually bother to train British people up and pay them fairly?
This was the biggest betrayal of the Conservative government. Brexit was a huge amount to do with training British workforce, making our country self-sufficient, and the Conservatives took it and they threw it back in our faces, and it's putting people at risk. But they don't. I promise you, Patrick, if they cared, they would have done something about it.
And the thing is, if we have 2-3 million people who are not working who can, we have to change the benefit system so they can't stay.
They've thrown Brits on a scrap heap, so they're paying people to work to stay at home more than they are to work.
You know what's also emerged today, OK? I'll just throw this in there very quickly as well. This is something we're going to be touching on tomorrow. So it's emerged that the Department for Work and Pensions have rather suspiciously actually stopped publishing data on welfare claims by nationality. So what nationality people on benefits are. And HMRC has stopped publishing tax contributions by nationality. Well, we cannot therefore know how many immigrants are coming here and claiming benefits, and we cannot officially, even though I think we do all know, don't we, which demographic of people are paying for those benefits. But there we go. Anyway, a Home Office spokesman has said, we strongly condemn offering health and care worker visa holders employment under false pretences and do not tolerate illegal activity in the labour market. We've already taken action to revoke the licence of sponsors engaged in such activity. We are committed to stamping out exploitation of those working in the care sector and have announced providers in England will only be able to sponsor migrant workers if they are undertaking activities regulated by the Care Quality Commission. Oh, right, OK. And Dr Reverend Philip Oyewole was the Baptist minister filmed in the Daily Mail investigation. He told the Daily Mail he only gave advice to those needing to help getting sponsorship and he never benefited financially. He's added, any advice I gave was solely intended to help them advance and be able to earn a respectable livelihood while lawfully remaining in the UK. The question remains, will anything be done about this? Well, it's the latest Great British giveaway, though. That's another one. And your chance to win £12,345, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats. Here's how it could all be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
OK, good luck. Now, look, still to come. We're off to a flyer, but I've got a heck of a lot else on for you tonight. It's been another record-breaking day of small boat crossings, but the House of Lords have voted down the government's Rwanda bill. Make it all make sense. Welby's piped up as well and made a reference to the Nazis, for goodness sake. Reform leader Richard Tice has a crack at it very shortly. But up next, George Galloway is going after the Labour Party.
We'll be putting candidates up in all these places, and we will either win or we'll make sure that Keir Starmer doesn't win.
Look, this is gripping for a variety of different reasons. Labour were apparently plain sailing, not anymore. I am asking, should Keir Starmer fear George Galloway? Former Labour Minister Bill Rammell goes head-to-head with George Galloway's right-hand man, Chris Williamson. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
People in this field and they talk about mental health assistance. And I know from personal experience within my own family circle that the help is just not there.
I know that with speaking to many families who've got autistic children and adults. They are really struggling at the moment, whether it's to do with education, getting a diagnosis. You know, once they get to 18 to 25, where's the help? There isn't the help there with social care. You know, I just set up a petition as well, who's going to look after my sons when I'm no longer around? Because that's what that's the story and the question that's at the back of every parent's mind. It's just so hard at the moment, and lots of small charities are closing. And for me, they're the backbone of the society because they're the ones that speak, you know, to parents continually all the time, or autistic adults. So,
and why has it to be that way? And, you know, we'll get government minister after government minister coming on and saying, we have greatly added to the resource here. We've had another 2.5 people we've hired last year and whatever. They twist statistics and they make it all sound good. But I know from the work I do in the charitable world, and I know from people who I know personally, it just isn't there. So stop telling it is. And the thing is, the demand for mental health care has just ballooned.
The earlier you start working with children who are autistic, the better the outcomes. I've seen it myself, and I know it with my own sons. I shouldn't have had to set up a school and remortgage my home. you know, for my boys. And so many parents are still struggling, like 20-odd years from when my boys were diagnosed, and they're saying it's improving, and we're talking about awareness, we're talking about acceptance. It's hard because I'm juggling caring, I'm juggling, you know, taking him to college, picking him up, you know, I'm running a charity, I'm doing events. I know I'm a workaholic, but I'm very passionate and I'm very driven.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, Reform leader Richard Tice reacts to another record-breaking day of small boat crossings. And you will not believe what Archbishop Justin Welby has said in the House of Lords. Seriously. But it's time now for our head-to-head. Well, he's just arrived back in Westminster, and already Rochdale's new MP, George Galloway, has been causing a little bit of trouble, taking the fight right to Labour's front door.
If I give you just one example, Angela Rayner has a parliamentary majority, I think, of around 3,000. There's at least 15,000 supporters of my point of view in her constituency. So we'll be putting a candidate up against her, either a Workers' Party candidate or more likely an independent candidate that we support, and that will vitally affect the election of the Labour deputy leader.
It comes after Galloway emerged victorious in the previously safe Labour seat of Rochdale in the by-election last week, winning almost 40% of the vote and wooing voters disenchanted with Keir Starmer's stance on a ceasefire in Gaza. So, with Galloway threatening to stand a candidate against Angela Rayner and in a lot more seats across the country, should Labour fear him? Let me know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at GBNews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But to debate this now, I am joined by former Labour Minister Bill Rammell and the Deputy Leader of Galloway's Workers' Party of Britain. It is Chris Williamson. Chris, I think I'll start with you on this one. George Galloway has decided to come out absolutely swinging. He's name-checked Angela Rayner. He's rattled off a load of other constituencies. I've done the numbers on some of those constituencies, and I think he could frankly take all of them. How scared should Labour be of Mr Galloway?
Well, I think they should be afraid. They should be very afraid, Patrick. Angela Rayner only has a majority, I think, of 4,263. And I've spoken to a lot of people in other constituencies that the Labour Party would expect to win. There are constituencies that they won under Tony Blair, places like Burton, places like Amber Valley, places like Erewash and so on, which is in my neck of the woods. And I've spoken to people there, and they are determined to put forward candidates, not necessarily to win, but to prevent Labour from winning, because people are determined to teach Labour a lesson. There's a kind of visceral hatred of the Labour Party because of the way in which they so badly let down the people who were the bedrock of Labour support for generations.
OK, yes. I mean, there's that side of it, the idea that maybe Labour is no longer the party for the working class. There is, of course, the other side of it, which is that I think it's fair to say that Labour did court the Muslim vote for quite a while, and now, given the situation that's going on in Gaza, a lot of those people have decided to left. Bill, I'll bring you in on this. I mean, I've got quite a few seats in front of me here that include places like Gorton and Denton, Oldham West, we've got Birmingham, Ladywood. I mean, there's loads of these, where when you look at the proportion of the Muslim vote in those constituencies and you look at the Labour majority, Labour are knackered.
Well, let's have a reality check, Patrick. The latest opinion poll from Murray out today gives Labour a 27% lead, with the Tories at the lowest level since Murray started opinion polling in 1978. You know, we've been here before. Galloway has won one-off elections, and at the subsequent general election has been roundly defeated. The people have trusted him and know he's an extremist who specialises in fomenting hatred and division in Muslim communities. But most importantly, he won't succeed because it's clear he wants the Conservatives to continue in power.
But Bill, I'm just going to stop. Bill, I'm just going to stop you there. It's just not for any other reason than I think we've got a slight issue with your microphone, which we'll try and get sorted out. I did pick up a lot of that, which I think I did anyway, which I'll put to Chris now. Chris, to paraphrase what Bill said there, your vote will not transcend nationally, and George Galloway whips up quite a lot of hate and division wherever he goes.
Well, I think Bill's been a bit complacent there, to be honest with you, Patrick. I mean, I do think we're in a very different situation to the one that we were in after the Iraq War. We've been through that experience now. Obviously, people are absolutely outraged about what's happening in Gaza, but it's not just that people are concerned about. There is no real discernible difference now between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, whether it be on foreign policy or whether it be on the domestic economic agenda either. And they're both committed to neoliberal economics. Neither are going to obviously be, addressing the profiteering, privatised utilities, rail companies and so on. And neither are going to address the fact that our manufacturing industry has been absolutely decimated. Jobs have been offshored.
Chris, can I ask? I know that you've mentioned a few other issues there, but I think the point stands, which is that the major reason behind why George Galloway has got elected in Rochdale is what's going on in Gaza, OK? And that has been a massive, massive issue for the Labour Party as well. If there's a ceasefire tomorrow, right, and we end up with an election in, say, November, what are you going to stand on? We've got George Galloway there is for Rochdale thing with the Palestinian flag as the backdrop of it, right? So what do you actually stand on if there's a ceasefire tomorrow and we have an election in November?
Well, let's hope and pray that there is a permanent and unconditional ceasefire. But of course, that wouldn't be enough. We'd need to see Israel, withdrawing from the occupied territories. And I think what we'd also need to see is an arms embargo being imposed, and we'd need to see a trade blockade, and we'd need to see Israel removed from all international sporting and other international civilized activities, such as the Eurovision Song Contest as well. So, I think on that side of things, the fact that Labour were so much in the pocket of the Israeli regime, they will not be forgiven for that, Patrick. But of course,
just to clarify, Chris, before I go back to Bill, then, so I did ask you there, what else are you going to run on, right? And it was all still Gaza-Israel related.
No, I'm just responding. Well, I'm only responding to the point that you made about that, Patrick. That, what else? What else would we be? And that's the only kind of issue that we'll be focusing on. Of course, that will still be an important issue. But of course, the other aspects of what we're talking about is an economy that works for ordinary people, tackling the housing crisis, tackling the fact that our public services are in absolute meltdown now. Our infrastructure is totally unfit for purpose. Look, Patrick, we're the 6th biggest economy in the world, and yet we've got over 14 million people living in poverty. That's absolute scandal, and people have had enough of that. And look, our democracy's been stolen from us. Democracy and politics should be about giving people a choice. And when there is no choice on offer from the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, the two main political parties, people are looking around for another alternative. Now, people will either stop at home, or if they've got an alternative, like they had in Rochdale with George Galloway, I think people will turn out, and will turn out in numbers. And there's no love for the Labour Party. The Labour Party is only riding high in the opinion polls now is because the Conservative Party are so incredibly unpopular. But when, as I say, people realise that Labour isn't really offering a credible alternative, and that's why I think the Workers' Party and other independent insurgent groupings can actually make a real dent in Labour support.
I've got to ask you about these independent. OK, I've got to ask you about some of this idea of the independent candidates, right? Because I actually think I'm going to be discussing this a bit later on. I actually think George Galloway might have played a bit of a blinder here for a reason that I suspect you might be about to get very angry with me about. OK, but it does mean that when you've got independent candidates standing in places, and if, hypothetically, they decide to come out with something incredibly fruity at a hustings or something like that, and yes, let's say that is Israel-related, Chris, OK, then actually George Galloway can wash his hands of that, because he goes, well, they're an independent, and they can't lose the whip from anyone because they're an independent, and so they just crack on, and they may well end up winning, all right? Is this not actually a tactic, really, to use, so that actually, potentially, wider elements of the British public might be concerned that with Workers' Party of Britain backing some of these independent candidates, we could end up with some, I'll just say it, proper wrong-uns in Parliament, Chris?
Well, listen, I think we've got about 650 proper wrong-uns in Parliament right now, so we couldn't do any worse. And, look, there's thousands, millions of people out there who could do a far better job than the parliamentarians, who seem to be in the pockets of the military-industrial complex and corporate capitalism. But no, look, I don't think it's as cynical as that, Patrick. What we're saying is, we want to obviously field a lot of candidates, but what we're also saying is, look, it's not our way or the highway. We're saying that we will work with others, and we've got people like Andrew Feinstein, for example, who's going to be fielding, be standing against Sir Keir Starmer in his own backyard. Andrew Feinstein, a very credible candidate, even with a chance, actually, of because we're beheading the Labour Party. He was an African National Congress MP under Nelson Mandela. And so we're very, very happy to work with independent groupings. What we're very keen to do, though, Patrick, is ensure that we don't field candidates against each other. What we're determined to do is try and maximise the alternative to Labour and the Conservatives by getting behind either an independent candidate or a Workers' Party candidate, or maybe another party from an insurgent.
Yes, absolutely, and I do think it is going to have a massive bearing at the next general election. And I think Keir Starmer is trapped because he can't go any softer on Israel because he's guaranteed to lose a lot of the vote that you guys are sweeping up, and he can't go any harder on them either, because then he would play into all sorts of this issue with Labour are back to the bad old days, etc. But look, Chris, thank you very much. It's Chris Williamson there, who's the deputy leader of the Workers of Britain Party. Now, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer did say this after George Galloway's victory in Rochdale.
Galloway only won because Labour didn't stand a candidate. I regret that we had to withdraw our candidate and apologise to voters in Rochdale. But I took that decision. It was the right decision. And when I say I've changed the Labour Party, I mean it. Obviously, we will put a first-class candidate, a unifier, before the voters in Rochdale at the general election.
Look, you can say what you like about Chris Williamson, George Galloway and all of that, OK? Absolutely, and loads of people have done and loads of people will. But the fact is, if they are putting either their own candidates or backing independent candidates on the same issue that George Galloway beat everyone else in Rochdale on, in a variety of different constituencies, which I am going to run through with you very, very shortly, I think it is reasonable to expect that they will give Labour an absolute kicking. But who do you agree with? Should Labour fear Mr Galloway? Ian says it's obvious that Galloway is trying to get Starmer to bend to his way of thinking. The sad thing is that Keir doesn't have the backbone to stand up to him. Elliot says Galloway may even do Labour a favour and drain off some of their toxic far-left cronies. David says the most likely outcome will be the Labour adopt more Muslim-appeasing policies. That is, of course, David's view. Look, your verdict is in. 68% of you think that Labour should fear Galloway. 32% of you say they shouldn't. Look, coming up, the highest tax burden in 70 years, and Jeremy Hunt is going for, quotes, prudence. Legend of Fleet Street, Kelvin Mackenzie, let's rip on our lame duck Chancellor very soon. But next, the House of Lords have just voted down the government's Rwanda bill. And how about this for rubbing salt in the wound? 385 illegal migrants crossed the Channel today. A new record for the year. And Justin Welby, all he can do is talk about the Nazis. Reform leader Richard Tice joins me live in the studio to give this unmissable reaction. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News. Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem, up until now, that in some areas, foreign care workers come in, but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Coming up, Kelvin McKenzie is going to hit back at Jeremy Hunt's plans for the looming spring budget. But first, it's time for former UK leader Richard Tice. Now, the House of Lords has defeated the government by voting against the flagship Rwanda bill on the same day that Channel migrant arrivals broke a new record for 2024. Despite elected MPs passing the Safety of Rwanda bill in the Commons back in December, unelected peers today blocked the legislation which seeks to declare Rwanda a safe country for migrant deportations. This comes as small boat arrivals broke records earlier, 385 illegal migrants sailing into Dover being the highest daily figure of the year so far. More than 700 have crossed the English Channel since Sunday. That's 700 since Sunday, taking the total number of illegal migrants entering Britain via small boat to nearly 3,000 already this year, and many are predicting it to be another record year. Richard, with small boat arrivals once again battering our southern border, is it wrong that the House of Lords have blocked the government's Rwanda bill?
Well, look, it's no surprise that they blocked this bill. We all knew that would happen. It actually suits the Prime Minister, so he can now blame the Lords for stopping the Rwanda bill. We all know that it was never going to make any difference whatsoever, and the proof is in the pudding. These arrivals this week, last week, all this year, which are now some 35 to 40% higher than 2 years ago, right, clearly shows it's not a deterrent. And when Mark White did that report pre-Christmas, and they were sort of laughing at this Rwanda thing, thinking the whole thing's a farce and a joke, this just proves it. It's not a deterrent. It's ridiculous.
So would you scrap Rwanda then?
I knew it would never be a deterrent. Our plan is the only plan that will work. You leave the ECHR and you pick the boats up, people out of the boats, and you safely take them back to Dunkirk and Calais, which we're legally entitled to do under 2 international maritime treaties. And nobody, I've banged on about this for a year, nobody has proven me wrong, because I'm right, but none of these gutless, feeble people in the House of Commons, whether it's Starmer, Sunak, Cleverly, any of them, have got the guts to do it. That's the only way this will stop, because what we're seeing now is that actually the numbers are going up and up and up.
OK, but you would actually, in a way, have the same policy as Labour, which is to scrap Rwanda even if it was working. Then.
Because it's not working. We know it's not working. The proof's in the pudding. Literally, you've just talked about 380-odd coming over today. Almost 10, I think, 10 have sadly lost their lives this year. My policy, the reform policy, our policy, is the kind and compassionate one. That'll stop the deaths.
If you wanted to turn the boats back, would you not have to get that through Parliament and then, through the law?
It's already allowed under international treaty law. It's there. I've read it. I know literally which sentences of which clauses. It's unforgivable that the government doesn't pick this up and run with it. Unforgivable.
They might be saying, well, actually, it's because we don't want to contribute to more loss of life in the Channel. But
no, it's the opposite, Patrick. It'll literally save lives. If we'd done this when I started talking about it, those 10 people who've died this year would still be alive.
OK, all right. We're also going to be talking about new data revealing that not a single burglary was solved by police in 48% of neighbourhoods in England and Wales over the last 3 years. That's despite a 2022 pledge by all 43 police chiefs to attend every single break-in. So, this led you, Richard, to declare that only your Reform Party will make Britain's streets safe again in that tweet. How?
So we issued our draft contract in Doncaster last week, and as part of that, we say we need an extra 40,000 police officers, which would bring us up sort of per head of population to a similar number to what they've got in France. We've got to get on with that recruitment process, and we've got to get bobbies back on the beat urgently, away from being behind the desk. The other thing you've got to do in parallel is you've got to build at least 10,000 detention places. You literally got to pick people up and take them off the streets.
How much is all of this costing?
We've allocated, the policing, we've allocated an extra, I think, 3 billion, and for the criminal and justice side of it, an extra 2 billion, and we identify in our contract, which is on our website, how you pay for all this stuff. So we set out all the savings, and then where we've got to spend it.
Could you outline that a bit? Because I think you also want to cut tax, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, the first thing is if you scrap net zero, you save £30 billion per annum. Serious cash, 30 billion. If you stop the Bank of England, if it stops paying interest, voluntary interest, on all the QE money that was printed, the reserves, that's another 35 billion. Literally 65 billion pounds a year that can pay for tax cuts, lots of other investments. And again, I mean, the waste in government spending, we all see it and it drives us nuts. They've got to be tough on this stuff. You've got to save £5 in 100. We're doing it at home, we're doing it in small businesses. The government and every spending department, every manager has got to do the same. You've got to scrap a whole department. I heard of one today I'd never heard of. It was a department of a department. And I thought, what a useless thing is that? And it sent me a survey. That's right, it was a Active Lives survey. And if I filled it in, I got paid a £5. Seriously? They send hundreds of thousands of these things out and they pay you a £5 if you fill in a survey. Just don't bother with the survey in the first place.
OK, and the other issue with this, potentially, is that it's not just about the laws that we've got in place at the moment, it's actually enforcing those laws. And that's one of the issues, certainly when it comes to the protests.
But that's because, but that, again, that's because of the criminal justice system. They haven't got enough resources, so you've got to increase the resourcing of it. And, yeah, you've actually got to have guidelines and sentencing.
And you would fund this by scrapping net zero and
Absolutely, it's all in our contract. So we actually identify £146 billion worth of savings, and then where you've got to allocate that. And within policing and criminal justice, that's what you've got to do. And you've got to, and we set it out, the critical reforms needed in the first 100 days and thereafter. The crisis is urgent.
So you wouldn't just do it, you'd do it within 100 days.
You've got to start the process within 100 days. Right. People look at it, they'll see it. I mean, everything is so urgent. You've got to say, absolute, resolute, get on with this. Don't hold back.
All right, Richard, well, thank you very, very much. As Richard Tice there, who is the leader of Reform UK. Look, coming up, George Galloway has just said the quiet bit out loud.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims.
The Patrick Christys Tonight show has been warning about this for months, and the big losers in all of this will be Starmer's Labour Party. Find out more shortly, but next, Budget Day is almost upon us, and we'll reveal what Jeremy Hunt has planned. We currently have a mammoth tax burden, but don't get your hopes up.
What they will get on Wednesday is a prudent and responsible plan.
Grief. Calvin Mackenzie asks, where have all the Tories gone? That's next on Patrick Christys Tonight.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting her zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting her top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible ghastly...
Yeah,
I mean, this is low stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she
Yes.
isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
Well,
if you
no,
say
they
that,
won't,
will
they
they? Because
won't.
you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, I'm the unfashionable workplace.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back now. Coming up, we're going to be talking about George Galloway saying the quiet bit out loud about the Muslim vote in Britain and the impact that's going to have at the next general election. I've got some astonishing stats for you that I think will make for quite grim reading. But first, it's time for Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie. Now, Jeremy Hunt will unveil his crucial spring budget on Wednesday, and he obviously said that, you know, we would channel his inner Gordon Brown and deliver prudence for Britain, didn't he? But then he doubled down when speaking to GB News' Camilla Tominay.
British people are very smart. They recognise gimmicks. They don't want any tricks. What they will get on Wednesday is a prudent and responsible plan for long-term growth.
I mean, do they want prudence, Mr Hunt? At the same time, they do recognise that the tax burden is the highest it's been in 70 years.
First of all, prudence. There is nothing less conservative than funding tax cuts by increasing borrowing.
I mean, good grief. The Chancellor is facing party pressure to deliver pre-election tax cuts, which are rumoured to include a 2p reduction in national insurance. However, fears are growing that he could fund these tax cuts by shock horror, raising tax in other areas: cigarettes, vapes, business class flights, second homes, and of course scrapping tax breaks for wealthy non-doms, despite previously slamming Labour's plans to do the same. Kelvin, you're not happy with Hunt, are you?
I am not happy with him. And by the way, as he well knows, neither are the voters of Hazelmere, Farnham and the like. He will almost certainly lose his seat come November, so that will be a sitting chancellor being thrown out. And the reason for it is saying things like prudence. Anybody with any memory at all hated Gordon Brown as chancellor. Why? Because he literally legged over the middle classes so that all the money went to the subsidised classes. So if you are a hard-working person who earns a reasonable amount of money, and what is a reasonable amount of money? It's hard to tell these days. Anywhere between, say 38,000 and we'll say early 50s, £60,000, you are in the absolute, arrow of somebody like a Jeremy Hunt. He's supposed to be a Tory chancellor. If he doesn't understand that the word prudence actually throws you back to a socialist world, which actually had some growth in it, and we haven't even got that today. We don't want to hear the word prudence, not from a Tory, and the voters will penalise him. And he's saying all this when he knows that the polls show that the Tories are down at 20%. What world are these people living in?
Well, this is it, and I think one of the problems is that he probably knows that he's about to lose his seat, and therefore he doesn't want his reputation to be doing anything radical. And we need to do something radical. I would argue that's maybe a dereliction of duty.
Look, at the moment, what you've got is the head boy of Winchester and the head boy of Charterhouse running the country. And I don't really blame them. They've got Liz Truss in their ear all the time, and they're worried about what happens to the pound, and essentially. But why don't they do something? Why don't they just say something like, we're going to scrap inheritance tax, we're going to remove stamp duty, except
because
for
he's too afraid.
£5 million houses.
He's too afraid of the headline in The Guardian that says it's a tax break for the rich.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter anymore. People aren't governed by what appears in papers. I know, right? It's the Sun what won it. Really? I don't think so, right? So that's the issue. Don't worry about your critics. Serve your own people. And your own people are middle-class people who actually would like to vote Conservative and have no earthly reason to do it.
Yeah, strong stuff, Calvin. Now, look, moving on to something else, but this time it's Labour-related, because Labour's Tanguy Debonair has joined the woke clamour to cancel Rule Britannia. Take a listen.
It's a decision for the people who run the proms, and again, like I said, it shouldn't be politicians who tell people how to run cultural events. I think that for a lot of people that feels like a very sort of British moment, which I think has to be respected as well. But for a lot of people it will feel, as Jacob Caddy-Mason said, it will feel alienating.
That's just the shadow culture secretary there calling Rule Britannia alienating.
Right. So it is incredible. What's worrying about this is if this is what she's saying when there is an election coming up and they've all had strict orders, the whole of the shadow cabinet, don't say anything, keep stum, no policies. If she's saying this kind of thing 6-7 months out, what on earth is she likely to say when she runs DCMS, right? And what will she be saying? Not only is it alienating, we find it offensive. And we've spoken to the BBC, and they've agreed in relation to, because they're going to get their licence fee up, they've agreed actually to drop Rule Britannia. Rule Britannia has been a central part of the proms. It's probably the only thing that everybody knows. Most people don't go there. Never heard of it. That last night, Rule Britannia, loads of shouting. Actually, it's a good thing. It's about our country. And what I do notice that the guy in the orchestra who said he didn't like it, right? I never hear a guy called John Smith who turns round and says, I don't like it. It's an uncomfortable feeling I have. And why people can't tell what happened 300 years ago. They don't care what happened. With the exception of the Church of England, nobody cares.
Yeah, well, we're coming on to the Church of England a little bit later on, because apparently they're dishing out £1 billion to say sorry for
No,
slavery.
they're asking for $1 billion to be put in, but they're only putting 100 million in themselves. They've got a wealth fund of 10 billion. What they don't want to do is take $1 billion out of that and therefore stop them hiring vicars.
Yeah, just quickly, though, do you think that British culture is under threat by a Labour government?
I do. I believe everything that at the moment that GBNews have a good old we have a shout up and an argument about all those things. I'm afraid when they get in, they'll say, you're quite right, Rule Britannia, that's of a different time, we're banning that.
Well, the question is then, what do we replace it with, though? Because, we do struggle to have a unifying culture at the moment.
Well, we aren't going to have a unifying culture. That is what the Labour Party would like to destroy. What they want to do is say, oh, we'll have a bit of this and a bit of that. But the one bit we won't have is what the 82% of the country want.
Well, it's interesting. Kelvin, thank you very much. I imagine that Labour would deny that they want to destroy a unifying culture, but obviously we'll have to hear it from them at some point. Look, thank you very much, Kelvin Mackenzie. Look, coming up, the Church of England has been told to pay £1 billion in slavery reparation. Welby's gone woke. Will the parish go broke? But next, George Galloway, sworn in as an MP. His message is clear. The next election, he says, is about Muslims. Is George Galloway right? I'll be revealing some astonishing information for you in just a couple of minutes.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of fog forming overnight, wet weather's pushing its way northwards, and then tomorrow, well, a few showers, but for many it's going to be a fine day. Far from fine out there this evening, though. Low pressure has been moving in, bringing some wet weather across the southwest, and these weather fronts continue to track north overnight. Nothing too heavy for most, but a damp, dank kind of night as it turns quite misty and murky, a few fog patches around. Touch of frost possible through parts of Wales and southwest England. Most towns and cities holding a couple of degrees above freezing, but nevertheless a chilly start, certainly across the Midlands. And it will be quite murky here, some fog patches for central and eastern parts of England, rain and drizzle over eastern England and lingering in northeast Scotland. Bit of a wet start for parts of Northern Ireland too. That rain will spread into western Scotland, but for a good chunk of the country it'll be a dry and a bright day once we've lost the morning mist and fog, but some heavy showers across the southeast. Temperatures here could reach 12 Celsius for most, 10 or 11 degrees. The wind's fairly light though, so probably feeling a touch warmer than today. A touch of frost returns though on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and Wednesday looking fairly grey again in the eastern areas with a few light showers possible, and many western areas dry and bright with some decent spells of sunshine. Temperatures again where it's grey, 8 or 9, with a bit of sunshine, 11 or 12.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles.
Galloway's sworn in, and then he says this.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims.
But is George Galloway just using the Muslim community to gain power? Also, Welby signs off £1 billion to say sorry for slavery. So is the Church of England just a woke lobby group? And what's really going on with Kate Middleton? Plus, British farmers have had enough. On my panel tonight, it is Express columnist Carol Malone. We've got trade unionist Andy MacDonald and ex-Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Oh, and I will show you what happens next. Get ready, Britain, here we go. A former Islamist responds to George Galloway's claim that this is a Muslim election. Next.
It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Polly Middlehurst, and our top story tonight. The government has suffered a string of defeats to its flagship immigration policy, the Rwanda Bill, in the House of Lords this evening. Peers have been variously voting in favour of monitoring mechanisms which would ensure safeguards in the bill would be fully implemented and making sure the bill is fully compliant with international and domestic law. Nearly 50 amendments in total were put forward, with more being voted on Wednesday. Meanwhile, a record 385 migrants crossed the English Channel today. That's the largest number on a single day this year. GB News understands a seventh small boat crossed into UK waters this evening carrying 49 migrants. It follows 6 other boats carrying 336 people, which were intercepted by Border Force. Yesterday, the Home Office recorded 327 people arriving in the UK after making the journey in 8 small boats, suggesting an average of around 41 migrants per boat. The Chancellor said today he wants to move the UK to being a lower tax economy, but will only do so in a responsible way. Jeremy Hunt was visiting a new digital engineering plant in Wiltshire, where he also announced a £360 million funding boost for manufacturing. Income tax has reached a historic high, and whilst he's promised some cuts, the Chancellor has been trying to manage expectations ahead of Wednesday's budget. Newly elected Rochdale MP George Galloway was sworn into Parliament today. The Workers' Party of Britain leader pledged allegiance to the King as part of the ceremony after winning last week's Rochdale by-election by more than 5,500 votes. Speaking today, he said, "It's my job to try to make Rochdale great again." France has become the first country in the world to make abortion a constitutional right for a woman. French parliamentarians voted to revise the country's 1958 constitution to enshrine women's guaranteed freedom to abort. MPs and senators convened at the Palace of Versailles, where the bill was approved with an overwhelming 780 to 72 votes. President Emmanuel Macron describing the move as French pride that had sent a universal message. And lastly, a Ferrari stolen from a former Formula One driver 28 years ago has been recovered by the police. The sports car, stolen from Austrian driver Gerhard Berger, is worth around £350,000. The Ferrari F512M was one of 2 vehicles taken while their drivers were at the San Marino Grand Prix in 1995. The Metropolitan Police says officers received a report from the car maker in January following checks on a vehicle being bought by somebody in the United States through a UK broker last year, and they solved the case. For the very latest stories, sign up for GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's hard to overstate how important this moment is.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law.
George Galloway is the new MP for Rochdale, but he said out loud what the Patrick Christys Tonight Show has been saying for months.
So that's what I'm predicting here. The next election will be about Muslims and will be about the taking away of civil liberties in this country. It's Sunak's last hope. I pray for the social peace of our country that it's a forlorn hope.
This will be a Muslim election, says Mr Galloway. He's going to try to take Labour Party big hitters.
If I give you just one example, Angela Rayner has a parliamentary majority, I think, of around 3,000. There's at least 15,000 supporters of my point of view in her constituency. So we'll be putting a candidate up against her, either a Workers' Party candidate or more likely an independent candidate that we support, and that will vitally affect the election of the Labour deputy leader.
But much more than this. He outlines how this Muslim election is going to unfold.
And there are many constituencies in London, from Ilford to Bethnal Green in the heart of the City of London, in Birmingham, in other parts of the West Midlands, in northwest England, in the towns around Rochdale, Oldham, Blackburn, Burnley, Nelson, Bury. We'll be putting candidates up in all these places, and we will either win or we'll make sure that Keir Starmer doesn't win.
Let's have a look at some of these areas now. So Labour's Shadow Justice Minister Shabana Mahmood in Birmingham Ladywood abstained on a ceasefire vote, 42.6% Muslim vote. Gone. Blackburn, Kate Holland, 42.9% Muslim vote. Bradford East, Imran Hussain, 39% Muslim vote. Oldham West, Jim McMahon, 28% Muslim vote. It won't actually really matter whether or not they voted for, against or abstained on a ceasefire, because the damage to Keir Starmer's Labour Party is among the Muslim community, and it has been done. Like for Tahir Ali, for example. He's the one who said this.
Therefore, is it now not the time for the Prime Minister to admit that he has the blood of thousands of innocent people on his hands, and for him to commit to demanding an immediate ceasefire?
His seat of Birmingham Hall Green and Moseley has a 49% Muslim vote. I bet that goes. Now, in all of those seats, I could have mentioned around 30 more. The Labour Party can wave goodbye to power, in my view. Keir Starmer has been absolutely shafted. He can't be seen to back Israel any more than he has done, because he's definitely lost those seats if he does that. And his MPs will rebel against him. But he can't go softer on Gaza, because he'll be accused of dragging Labour back into the old anti-Semitism scandal, won't he? George Galloway is playing yet another blinder by confirming, in most cases in these seats, that they will just back an independent. Why? Well, that's so that if one of those independent candidates echoes the quite grotesque sentiments of the deputy leader of Galloway's Workers' Party of Britain, Chris Williamson, who regularly and despicably compares Israel to the Nazis and Gaza to Auschwitz, Galloway will be distanced from them. They won't belong to any party that will have to justify their comments, and they can't lose the party whip, so they can just carry on and quite possibly win. The fact is this: there is now a well-organised, highly energised, majority Muslim, pro-Gaza, anti-Israel, borderline Hamas sympathising movement with a charismatic totemic leader at the helm. It will be a massive problem for Labour, and mark my words, after they've been served their backsides on a Galloway-shaped platter at the next election, all of a sudden the Labour Party will start to care a lot more about Islamist extremism. But I'm joined now by an interesting character. He's a former Islamist and extremism prevention educator now. It's Suhail Ahmed. Suhail, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. We spoke a lot there about George Galloway and the Muslim vote. I mean, he said it himself, didn't he, really? But I understand that you have certain concerns about this, in the sense that, do you think that George Galloway might be using the Muslim community a bit? Talk to me about that.
That's a very good question. See, when I was a teenager, I was quite young. The very same mosque that radicalized me, he attended that mosque. And in that speech he gave, he implied very strongly that he may be Muslim. And when questioned on it at the end, responded with, "Oh, I can't be honest because of the shadowy elite at the top." And that was his kind of response. And not only did that confirm to me my own conspiratorial fears that I'd been raised with, and not only did it confirm to me the ideology I'd been raised with, Islamism, it suggested to me that actually everyone was out to get me, and that as a result I was right to hate everyone, i.e. to hate Britain. And that is incredibly damaging in and of itself. But secondly, he's clearly manipulating. He's clearly suggesting that he may be Muslim or implying it, but in a way that retains his ability to plausibly deny that fact. And I don't think he's Muslim at all. I don't think he is. But he's acting as though he were in order to gain votes. And that's deeply divisive, especially in a secular society where we've agreed that overt expressions of religion in politics isn't something we do. By convention, that's what we've agreed. But he's undermining all of that, and he's reversing it. It's divisive. People will look at that, look at his political speeches, and I wouldn't be surprised if many people actually started hating Muslims as a result.
I mean, it's strong stuff. I'm just going to put to you a comment from George Galloway's spokesperson that we got later in the day. It's quite short. It says, George's faith is between him and God. So that's their statement. He was also sworn in today using a copy of the Bible, I believe. Some people would say, why does it matter whether or not he is a Muslim, whether or not he pretends to be a Muslim from time to time? I'm sure he would deny that, or any of this. Why does that matter?
It doesn't matter what his religion is, but it suddenly does matter when he makes it a matter of a point on which to convince people to vote for him, when he uses religion in order to garner votes and sympathy. That is when it matters. He's the one who made it matter, not me, not anyone else. No one told him to use Islam or Christianity or any other religion as part of his election campaigning. He's the one who did, and that's entirely on him.
OK. Well, I'm sure George Galloway would deny using religion for votes, absolutely. Do you think, then, that George Galloway is in your experience, is saying, his implication, in your view, his implication that he may well be a Muslim, you think is a useful vote winner, do you, amongst the Muslim community?
I think it may be calculated, and in fact, I'm pretty strongly certain, I can't be entirely certain, but I'm pretty certain that he's doing this in a very calculated manner, so as to garner the sympathy of Muslims. And frankly, with our community, with the Muslim community, we have a high degree of confirmation bias. So if someone even implies that they may be Muslim, someone who even implies certain things, we'll kind of take that as an affirmative. And he knows that, and he uses that. Okay. So he's weaponizing the fears of the Muslim community against them, and in the process, dividing them and separating them from the British people.
Okay.
That is dangerous.
It's incredibly interesting to have you on, Sohail, and I do hope to talk to you again at some point very soon. Now, it's Sohail Ahmed there, who is, by his own admission, a former Islamist, now an extremism prevention educator. I'll reiterate that spokesperson for George Galloway said George's faith is between him and God, and no doubt George would deny that he's in any way using religion in order to garner votes. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. We have got Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, I've got trade unionist Andy McDonald, and I've also got ex-Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. I'm going to go to you first on this, Carol, and just ask whether or not you think that the quotes-unquote Muslim vote is going to be seismic at this election. George Galloway saying essentially it's going to be the Muslim election.
Hugely. I mean, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. You saw his game today and all the clips we've been showing. You know, he's actually named all the places he's going to field a candidate. And I know people say, oh, he never lasts for long in Parliament. He's going to last long enough to damage this next election. I think Labour could be done for here because they have to do one of two things now. You know, what's the thing that chilled me most about Galloway today, where he said, we'll field a candidate and even if we don't win, we'll make sure Starmer doesn't. Yeah. I mean, that must have them all, you know, cringing. He's already said he's going for Remainers. I think it's terrifying because Labour are going to have to ramp up their support of Gaza more than they already have to try and get the pro-Palestinian vote back again, which is terrifying.
I think it's lost, though. I'm sorry, I agree with you, but I think that they've lost that.
But, I mean, I think this could be very damaging come the next election. I think Labour thought they had it in the bag. I don't think they have it in the bag anymore.
OK, all right, Andy, I mean, Angela Rayner potentially goes. Apparently they've got a strong candidate against Starmer. West Streeting's on the brink. I mean, you could lose the Labour Party.
I mean, this guy, you know, he's represented 4 cities for 3 parties across 4 decades, you know, one-term George, that's what they call him. He's just absolutely waffling, you know, name this candidate that you're going to stand against Angela Rayner. You know, she's a stalwart of the community. She's not going to be defeated by some chippy Workers' Party.
He's come in at a time when there's a rising tide of anti-Islamism, and we're seeing it happening. We're seeing it on the streets. This is like the perfect storm.
This is just George Galloway. No one else is like George Galloway in his party. You saw his deputy leader, Chris Williamson.
All right, but we have got
quite
quite a charismatic chap who is Shamima Begum's family lawyer, who's going to be standing, I believe, in Bethnal Green, for example, as an independent. That could happen. Belinda, I'll just throw it over to you. Do you think that actually we are going to be seeing the Muslim vote essentially bring Labour down here?
I don't know, and I'll tell you why. I think the circumstances in Rochdale were exceptional, very, very unusual. Galloway is a highly known, charismatic, intelligent man, sometimes, except when he talks about Israel and Bradford. You know, there aren't many people like him. And I also think if there's a ceasefire between now and the election, it will fizzle out. But the words that really made my skin feel quite chilled is when he singled out a religious faith to be the foundation of the next election. If anyone had said it was the Hindus, the Christians, it would be absolutely alienating. And I think many Brits out there are terrified of the foreign nationalism that's being shown on our streets and in our politics.
What is terrifying about Galloway is he's a very smart man. We've all met him. We've all had experience of him. He's very clever, and it worries me that he is going to influence people who maybe aren't Muslim to vote for him.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. I do also think, though, that we live in a democracy and it is up to other people to make the case against him if they don't want him to be as much of a threat. And people can't just sit on their hands and complain about him without doing anything about it.
But they didn't at Rochdale, Patrick. 10,000 majority.
Exactly. Right, look, coming up. Earlier tonight, the Princess of Wales's uncle, Gary Goldsmith, has apparently entered the Celebrity Big Brother house. Kate's mother is absolutely fuming. We'll have the full report of you, including a little clip from Goldsmith, very, very soon. That's in all of tomorrow's front pages. But next, the Church of England is hoping to create a £1 billion fund for slavery reparations. Has the C of E become a woke lobby group instead of a religion? Former chaplain to our late Queen joins me. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You're now in exile. I imagine it wouldn't be safe for you to go back to Russia. Can I ask you if you feel safe personally, and what do you think can be done to remove Putin, or is he going to be there for as long as he wants?
I think that is, of course, fundamental question. It is there should be pressure inside Russia and outside. Inside Russia right now, it's impossible because Putin put all leaders in jail and some of us just abroad. You know, just 2 were already killed. Mr. Nemtsov, Boris Nemtsov, my friend, my collaborator on my party, was killed on the walls on Kremlin. Alexei Navalny was killed in jail and in the camp. And that is, the people live in fear to identify themselves as protesters, to identify themselves as against Putin's regime, etc. That's why today there is no chance for opposition to rise inside Russia. But outside, of course, this war against Ukraine, that is the fundamental issue for all foreign leaders. And in fact, just support of Ukraine and not to let Putin to destroy Ukraine, to defeat Ukraine. That is an important issue because just Ukraine, that's not just in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. Ukraine just fighting for their territorial integrity, but fighting for the whole European countries because after Ukraine, other countries could appear, other subject of aggression could be, and Putin easily could try to test Article 5 of NATO Charter. It could be would be one of the small countries of Baltic states.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Tomorrow's newspaper front page is coming out very soon. But first, the Church of England is drumming up money for a £1 billion fund to address the legacy of slavery, which, according to the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is only the beginning of a multi-generational response to the appalling evil of transatlantic chattel enslavement. It comes at the same time as the Church is hiring an anti-racism officer to, quote, deconstruct whiteness. And that's not all the Church has been wasting in its whopping £10 billion endowment on. Last week, all parishes were told to draw up a race action plan after a pro-BLM Bishop of Dover told the Church to embrace being woke. Meanwhile, Justin Welby is still doing his level best to thwart the government's Rwanda plan after he voted it down in the House of Lords today and said this.
Rise in international human rights law grew out of the horrors of the 1940s, where a government that in 1933 in Germany had been legally and properly elected passed horrific laws that did terrible things.
It's brought up Hitler and the Nazis. And let's not forget, the Church stands accused of helping migrants submit completely bogus asylum claims, all while parishes are closing at the fastest rate since records began. So has the Church of England become a woke lobby group instead of a religion? I'm joined now by the former chaplain to our late Queen Elizabeth, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Thank you very much. Is the Church of England now not a religion, just a woke lobby group?
Well, Patrick, it's doing a very good imitation of being a woke lobby group, if it is still a religion. The trouble is, the ideas the Archbishop of Canterbury is promulgating in the public space are anti-Christian. They've got nothing to do with the faith. And, I mean, he wasn't always like this. I think he's lost his way. But undoubtedly, these latest schemes involving reparations and racism have nothing to do with Christianity. And just at the time when the Church really needs reinvigorating and a new vision of what it really is all about.
I mean, other religions aren't shy about their faith. Other religions are absolutely banging the drum. I mean, I would love to see the attendances at mosques versus the attendances at local parish churches and track their correlation and their incline or decline, respectively. But, you know, Welby here talking about a £1 billion fund to say sorry for slavery. Does he have anything to say sorry for?
Well, he really doesn't. I mean, first of all, there are so many things wrong with this. We don't believe in ancestral guilt. We believe in putting things right in this generation between people who've fallen out. There is nothing else in which we hold our ancestors accountable for. What's happened, of course, is that we've imported a piece of American guilt without any exploration of it. And we don't believe in tainted money either. It's as if the Archbishop has an idea that there are sort of gold ingots somewhere which are stained with somebody else's blood. Money doesn't work like like that. And once again, there is no money that we make accountable and treat as though it kind of carries a level of guilt with it. And most importantly, Christians don't believe in racism. We believe, that may sound a strange thing to do, but the trouble is racism is much too narrow a concept. The idea we fall out with our neighbor just because of the color of their skin is ludicrous. There are all kinds of reasons why people dislike their neighbors. And to be a Christian is to no longer see anybody in racial terms at all. You can't be a racist if you're a Christian, and if you're a racist, you're not a Christian. So the thing to do, if the Archbishop doesn't like racism, is to make more people Christians and to make Christians more Christian. What he's doing is a sub-Christian nonsense.
Well, and indeed, some of the things that he has apparently been doing, or certainly under the Church's name, have actually been willingly baptising people who are certainly not Christian in order for them to game our asylum system. And what I thought was interesting about that as well is that they initially denied all of this stuff and said there's nothing to see here. And now, a couple of months later, they've decided to launch a review into it all. But look, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on. I'll have you back on because no doubt it's only a week or so until Welby does something else like this. As the former chaplain to our late Queen Elizabeth, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Now, following this announcement of the new £1 billion target, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said this: "In seeking justice for all, we must continue to work together, remembering that all are created in the image of God. The Oversight Group's independent work with the Church Commissioners is the beginning of a multi-generational response to the appalling evil of transatlantic chattel enslavement. My prayer is that this work will stimulate further visionary and practical co-created action. Put it to a vote at your local parish, if there's anybody left there, Archbishop." Up next, as we delve into the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, I've got an astonishing update for you, not just about Kate, but also about the royal family apparently being incredibly wound up by someone who's just wandered into Celebrity Big Brother. I'll see you in a sec.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Meanwhile, we've got Prince William getting on with being a real royal. Or is he? I mean, this business about being ambassadorial in the Middle East, about the Gaza situation, about the Israeli situation, about trying to be friends with everyone, this is sensitive ground.
It's very demanding, I think. It must be one of the most difficult things he's ever done. He has been to Israel before and the Middle East. He was the first of the royals who went there, and he spoke to the leaders of both in Israel and on the West Bank. Yeah. And he managed it beautifully. He managed to carve a very sort of delicate path. I think as well, he doesn't want to cut ribbons. He doesn't want to do the ordinary things, to go round and see people and do it unless he really cares about it. This is people who are homeless. These are people who are in a war. I think he wants to go very, very high up, not for arrogance.
Make a difference in the world.
But to help, and to try and smooth things over.
Angela, I might be way off the mark here, but he did not, to me, look a happy man at BAFTAs on Sunday night. There was
lonely, for sure.
Yeah, there was just something about his face that looked like I didn't want to be here.
It did. He did look lonely, but I also thought he made a huge effort so that everyone would enjoy it. He didn't want to pass it on. He doesn't use his personal feelings publicly, whereas Harry, you can tell a mile off what Harry's thinking. So he's done very well for that. And I think because he's been their president since 2010, he didn't want to let them down. Very nice of him. But he's obviously very worried about her. And he's got a lot of pressure there. I mean, he's a man with massive pressure for his father, for his wife, making sure the children are all right. And now he's taken on the Middle East, you know.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m.
We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome along. It's time now to bring you all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and there are some absolute corkers in here. Let's do it. OK, let's go with the Metro. Tiny kids dying in housing crisis. Scandal of temporary accommodation. MPs here, 42 of the 55 victims were babies aged under 1. Let's go to the Daily Express. France must do more with our millions to stop small boats. So this is Priti Patel demanding robust action after 527 migrants arrive in 48 hours. With respect to the Daily Express, you can tell this front page was printed a few hours ago because that's now way up above the old 650 mark. Classic. The Sun. Harry threw my niece Kate under the bus. Uncle Gary's fury at slurs over the royals. This is a Celebrity Big Brother exclusive, and we are going to be talking about this very, very shortly. But before then, we go to the Eye. Tory tensions as Hunt and Sunak wrestle over crunch budget. Possibly because Jeremy Hunt wants to take millions off Sunak's wife, actually. But Chancellor is warned he faces £2 billion NHS black hole. Look, here we go. We've got Jeremy from Accounts going up against the old corporate sector, Rishi Sunak, in what I imagine is the least inspiring fight the world has ever seen. Daily Mail. Vicars in uproar over church's £1 billion slavery reparations. We have just done that story. Is the church now a woke lobby group? Apparently it's anti-Christian what they're doing. And as Kate breaks cover, what will her naughty Uncle Gary say in the Big Brother house? Well, time to take a little look at some of these front pages with you now with my fantastic panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, trade unionist Andy MacDonald and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda Delucy. Well, as you just heard, a close relation to the royal family has entered the Celebrity Big Brother house.
Gary Goldsmith, the uncle to the future Queen of our country, Catherine Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. She is simply perfect. First time I met William, Catherine was cooking and William said, "Hi, do you want a cup of tea?" Very normal. I'm an absolute nightmare to live with. There's a reason why I've had 4 wives.
So it's confirmed, Gary Goldsmith, the uncle of the Princess of Wales, will appear on ITV's reality show. The Daily Mail reports that Kate's infuriated mother read the riot act to Goldsmith, warning her brother not to spill any royal secrets. But that's fallen on deaf ears, judging by the Sun's front page, because Goldsmith has immediately told the newspaper that Prince Harry has thrown his niece under the bus. He also slammed claims of royal racism as BS. Carol, could this be a big problem for the Waleses?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. It is. It's going to be fantastic for us because, you know, the Big Brother signed him up for the very reason they know he's going to blab, and he is going to blab. And the thing is, you know, you can tell from that just clip that he's a bit of an idiot, so he's not going to be able to keep his mouth shut. He can't keep it shut on day one, so he's going to... And the thing about... Now, of course, is the perfect time for them to spill on Kate because she's not well. That's going to be the problem for the royal family. Carol will be furious if he starts spilling the beans about what's wrong with Kate. That's going to be a big problem.
Well, that is going to be a big issue, and it's actually... William was out and about the other day, and he was asked, and this is going to keep happening, how's Kate, and he was silent on it, you know, and you just think, not fair enough, but... People are going to keep asking. I mean, this could be a problem for the royals.
Maybe, but it's so bizarre. He's on the Celebrity Big Brother. He's a recruitment agent from South London. Like,
it's not bizarre at all. It's because he's Kate's cousin. That's
he's
why.
Kate's uncle, but you know, it must be a slow news day at the Sun. You know, the day before the budget. This is the entirety of the front page.
Are you mad? This is gold dust for the Sun.
He's a fringe member of.
He's a fringe member who sees Kate on a regular enough basis to glean some gossip, of course, and he'll spill it all.
He could just be lying. How do we know he's not lying?
Well,
he could just be making it up.
We don't know.
And we haven't had a relative of the royal family yet defend them, battle for them, fight for them after the onslaught of hell that Harry and Meghan put them through. So I think people are going to be interested in that. He's definitely a naughty boy. I've just been reading the list of things that he's been up to. He's not just, you know, like a one-off whoops-a-daisy. He's got a lot of whoops-a-daisies racked up on his CV.
And that's why he's and so shed a load of money.
He may well blab.
Yeah, leave that one there. Racked up on his CV. Anyway, but no, he makes a good point here. Harry threw my niece Kate under the bus. I mean, presumably Prince Harry's a bit miffed about this, Belinda, because he is, by the sounds of it, pretty sound, this guy, in some respects.
I was going to say, really? I think
on the Harry issue.
he would be very entertaining. I would be scared if I was Carol, if I'm being honest. The idea that my loose cannon naughty brother is getting paid to be a little bit devilish, let's be honest. But I just hope he respects his niece as well, that she's not well, she's ill, and she's at a vulnerable time, that hopefully that he'll keep stum about the most sensitive issues of her health.
It's just bad on, you know, Big Brother, it's been, you know, controversial of platforming questionable individuals. You know, Andrew Tate rose to fame in Big Brother.
Must be some George Galloway was in there.
George Galloway, you know, these people. But, you know, this bloke, he was found guilty of beating his wife. You know, with the Russell Brand onslaught of the Big Brother.
Sorry, I wasn't aware
it was
of that.
like genuine concerns about women's safety with people who've gone into the Big Brother house.
God, I didn't read that. That's awful.
Like, it's
They're
weird.
platforming the guy because
But it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible.
Well, but when has that stopped anybody in
Well,
the
it should.
pursuit?
It should.
Not in the pursuit of ratings. I mean,
it should stop them.
But you raised an interesting point earlier, and you said, Patrick, you're not even listening.
I am listening. No, I am listening. I'm reading some of the
You
quotes.
sometimes do raise an interesting point, and what you said was that not often, but sometimes. And you said earlier that this will. Oh, do you know? I forgot. No, wait. Oh, yes, you said that William stayed silent.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I was thinking about this today and thinking, yes, he would stay silent, and he should, because that's Kate's wishes. However, on the other hand, it makes me feel vaguely unsettled, and I'm sure it makes the nation feel unsettled, that we don't know what's wrong with her. And I kind of want to know. I want to feel safe that it's not something terrible and awful.
Yeah, but can you imagine as their children seeing the intimate details of your mum's health issues? We must remind they're human, and like all of us, we go through ups and downs with our health, and I don't want that plastered around for anyone.
And especially if it's a woman's thing, especially that she won't want it out there. But by the same token, all I want to know is that it's not really serious.
The problem is going to be, I mean, it's happening, isn't it? Which is that, rightly or wrongly, wherever William goes. He's just going to be asked. And by the way, I don't mean this necessarily by members of the press. I just mean by well-wishers. You probably do mean well. Oh, is Kate recovering well? Oh, I hope Kate's all right. Oh, I hope... And at some point, he's going to have to say something. And he could have just said, yeah, she's fine, she's doing well. But he didn't say that.
Yeah, I think, you know, when he was in Wrexham today going to the racecourse stadium, you know, someone went, oh, can I have a selfie? How's Kate? She's going, yeah, she's right, she's fine. Like, it's all good. And it's just... It's poor PR from them. Just say she's fine and
No, he's being a good husband.
You don't have to go into details. Just go, yeah, it's cool, whatever.
But he obviously, I think it's a reflection of how much he cares, that he doesn't have a slick, fob-off answer, that maybe actually he is upset. Or
but isn't it interesting that when from the minute Charles, quite courageously, I think, told us what was wrong with him, nobody's really asking about it. Now, we know he's getting treatment, we hope he's getting better, but no one's pursuing him in the way they're pursuing William, which is interesting.
That was the standard for years, Prince Philip. We all knew he was unwell for quite a long time. We didn't know what. It was just, Phil's unwell. The Queen, towards the end of her, we were like, yeah, she's an old lady. She's probably unwell. And I think we should go back to that.
But they didn't announce things in the way. Again, never complain, never explain. They also didn't really announce that the Queen had periodic mobility issues right up until the moment when she died, OK? Prince Philip stepped back from royal duties. That was about all they said about that, wasn't there, really? And even now, I don't think we know. But now, I believe I've got some kind of comment from Gary Goldsmith here. Here we go. He sounds great. He sounds like a second-hand car salesman, doesn't he, this guy? Exactly. Just nipping around Gary Goldsmith for an old Peugeot. Anyway, he told The Sun, I've spoken to Carol, presumably not you, just to send my love, and we talked about Kate, given what's going on. Here we go. There's lots going on with the family at the moment. So she's spinning a lot of plates right now. It's quite stressful. So the last thing I'm going to do is bring any stress to them. Yeah, all right, apart from strolling into Celebrity Big Brother and telling them that immediately. But anyway, right, look, our police have come under repeated criticism in recent years, but this response by the Met to a fire in Kensington shows the very best of our police officers.
Let's declare this critical. Stay down on the floor and cover the door.
Well done. Officers there only took 5 minutes to get to the scene. Thankfully, no one suffered serious injuries. A 25-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. He remains in custody, but well done to those police officers. The fire brigade took a bit of stick, didn't they, when they didn't go into some water to rescue someone in a car because it was above waist height. You've got police officers there who are copping it at the moment, sometimes from people like me, it must be said, who decided that they were going to storm straight in headfirst into a fire. So, fair play. Well done for those people. Right now, in another shift in tone, you could win the Spring Essentials in our latest Great British giveaway. There's a garden gadget package, a shopping spree, and 12,345. Yes, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in cash. Here's all the details.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Coming up, is a salary of 120 grand a year for Sadiq Khan's night czar really worth the money? We will expose her taxpayer-funded trips around the world as I crown tonight's greatest Britain and a union jackass. But next, I've got more of tomorrow's front pages. Plus, Rule Britannia alienates many Britons, according to Labour's Tangham Debonair. That's the Shadow Culture Secretary, by the way. So are woke lefties trying to rob us of our culture? We'll debate that. Stay tuned.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Mail on Sunday, and the University of Buckingham is calling out wokery at the University of Cambridge. So I guess the culture wars must be almost over then, Josh.
Almost, yeah. Cambridge University discriminating against rich, white, privileged, privately educated men, claims...
The worst
which
kind.
is, basically me. Claims Vice-Chancellor of rival institution, which is launching a degree course on the rise of woke culture. Now, I 100% agree with this. I applied to get into Cambridge, and I didn't get in because I was too thick.
Oh, wow, so it wasn't the DEI mafia?
No, unfortunately, it was pre-DEI. So it's like a double insult now.
Were you one of those guys who was like had a B average? You know, you look like you should be an A because you act like an A.
I act like an A.
You act
I've
like
got
an
glasses.
A. Yeah.
They're fake. I don't even have to. They don't even have lenses.
Lewis, do you think that this is a little bit cynical? Because I looked up this University of Buckingham, and they opened in 1973, and their tagline on the internet is the home of the two-year degree. They're trying to bring down Cambridge University with this.
Well, why not pick the biggest? I mean, that's why we should. We should be attacking the BBC 24/7 on this thing.
I thought we were.
We aren't. We don't mention it enough.
Listen.
What I found shocking about this story is Buckingham is the country's oldest private university, and was founded in 1976. Something is wrong there. What do you think? Was Oxford founded by the government? I don't think it was. Was Cambridge?
No, absolutely not. I looked up Cambridge was 1209.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So you can
it
get...
wasn't a government
But this is
grant.
actually quite scary. They can do a course on the origins of the woke movement. I'm just saying, someone's going to have a degree, and our job is going to be under threat. They're going to know much more than us.
Never.
It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. It's time to return to the liveliest paper review. You'll get on the telly with more front pages. Right, The Guardian. Doctors issue dire warning as NHS faces biggest budget cut in 50 years. This is obviously just in time for the old budget, isn't it? Alarm over Wild West in autism diagnosis. Adults apparently awaiting an autism diagnosis face a postcode lottery in England. Well, there we go. The Times. Hunt poised to freeze fuel duty in budget boost for drivers. The big story for me is literally the big story they've gone for, though. Tories divided over new definition of extremism. Trans rights critics and traditional Christians could be caught up in a crackdown on Islamism. Yeah, again, in the wake of everything we've got going on, the Conservative Party, much to the disdain of some Tory MPs who contacted me today, have decided to devote a lot of time to a definition of Islamophobia, etc. We'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit, but that's it, isn't it, for the front page? We've done all the others, so there we go. Let's talk about it now. Here to do it is my press pack. We have got the wonderful Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, we've got trade unionist Andy MacDonald, former Brexit Party MEP Belinda DeLucy. Look, Belinda, I'll just start with you on this one. Essentially now, plans for a new definition of extremism have raised concerns in the Cabinet that groups opposed to gay marriage, abortion or new transgender rights could be inadvertently penalised. There was also, I had numerous different Tory MPs message me today in response to some comments made earlier. The Tory party have essentially decided to roll over and appoint somebody to look into anti-Muslim sentiment within the party without hitting back at Labour over anti-Semitism. There is a sense that they are capitulating.
Oh, I get very scared about all this. I think there's a big difference between Islamism and Muslims. Anti-Muslim bigotry is absolutely wrong, but we have to be able to question Islamism. I have a very rational fear of Islamist men, women around the world, gays around the world, apostates around the world. There's a long list of victims. It's used as a springboard for a lot of violence. You know, 55,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria over the past 15 years by violent Islamists. I mean, it's essential we keep that debate really open because Islamism is a political ideology that has caused a huge amount of harm and our government's allowed it to root here, and we have to be able to not conflate them with the ordinary Muslim population who just want to get on with their lives. And this, I think, will harm it and act as a free speech curtailment on justified criticism on the ideology.
Idiots like Frankie Boyle last week saying whenever he hears the word Islamism, he thinks, oh, racist.
What an idiot.
That's what we have to stop. Yeah, and we've got to look at the British media is partly to blame here because whenever there's a murder in this country with terrorists on television and when it is committed by Islamists, they don't say it's that at all. They say a terror group, a violent group, but they don't say the word Islamist. Why? Are they terrified of upsetting Islamist murder? Yeah. It's just the most bizarre.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here when it comes to exactly what they are doing, but I can't help but feel as though it's just going to cause more.
We should ban the word Islamophobia for a start. France did that years ago. Yeah. Because that stops criticism of a religion that has escaped criticism.
Yeah. Why should ideas be free from criticism?
Yes.
I can't. I don't get it.
I'm just gonna whiz us on because this one has got a direct Labour involvement. So I think you're a trade unionist, and you might be quite keen on this. So, Labour's shadow culture secretary Tangam Debonair has fanned flames on the Rule Britannia row. So the patriotic song is a much-loved finale to last night at the proms, but Debonair said she understood the calls for it to be axed. Here we go.
I think it's a decision for the people who run the proms. And again, like I said, it shouldn't be politicians who tell people how to run cultural events. I think that for a lot of people, that feels like a very sort of British moment, which I think has to be respected as well. But for a lot of people, it will feel, as Jacob Kelly-Mason said, it will feel alienating.
Andy, we await Tangam Debonair as our culture secretary, and if she's saying that when she's not in power, then presumably she'll ban it when she is.
Well, no, she quite clearly said she's going to leave it to the BBC, the people that run the proms. I think, what was the quote? It's not her favourite piece of music. No, she was a professional musician for the better part of 2 decades. I'm sure she's practised many pieces, performed many pieces that she prefers to Rule Britannia, and I think...
Ode to Joy.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I think
the EU anthem there.
She supported the Brexit campaign. I'd fact-check that, but I think she did support the Brexit campaign. So maybe not. But, we need to get a grip. If someone's patriotism is dictated to whether or not Rule Britannia is their favourite song, God,
that's not the point, and you know it.
And when she says, lots of people feel alienated, who are these lots of people? She's clearly never been to the proms. Rule Britannia is the most...
I think she performed at the proms.
She has been to the proms.
Because it is the most uniting song that they ever play at the proms. People go nuts over it.
I think God Save the King is more uniting.
No, I think this is
Should we ban that as well? It alienates people. People
if we're going down patriotism, sing the national anthem, Rule Britannia, it's...
You know full well, Andy, if Labour gets in, our music, our plays displays, our street names, our statues, they're all going to get washed over.
Well, you say that, you know, arts and culture funding has been stripped away over the last 14 years by the Tory government, so they've had a good go at washing it out.
Well, I say if you're alienated by one of the most patriotic pieces of music out there, that's a you problem, and I'd suggest you know.
She also says culture is for everyone. Well, what about art? What about the
our culture?
We want it. We don't want it back.
It's staying.
All right, staying. Right, OK, right, now. 200 farmers staged an epic protest through Canterbury on Sunday against foreign imports, as well as overly low supermarket retail prices for British-grown food. So both, they said, were undercutting domestic production. The farmers are bang at it. So, despite farmers' frustrations, DEFRA say they firmly back British farmers, but so long as the farmers feel their future is at stake, the pitchforks will remain out. It's catching on, isn't it? We're seeing it right across Europe. We're seeing it here. Back British farmers. That seems to be the general message there, doesn't it? But look, it's time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. OK, Carol, who is your greatest Briton, please?
Mine is Rishi Sunak for finally finding the cojones to speak out against the extremists that are taking over this country. He made a powerful speech at the weekend, and he said of Galloway that, you know, an MP who denies the horror of October the 7th attacks and supports Hezbollah had to go with him. And he said anyone who spews hate at protests, they've got to be stopped. And he's right. Let's hope he's.
He also mentioned the far right, though, didn't he? I wondered if you were going to pick up on that. Was he equating far right extremism to the Islamist extremism we're seeing?
I think he was just saying extremists in general, and he's right. We've got to tackle it.
OK, well, fair. Well, we do have to tackle extremism in all its forms. Right, come on, Andy.
My greatest Britain this week is the Canterbury farmers. I think, you know, fighting for their industries is a very, very honourable thing to do. You know, we've seen it across Europe. You know, looking to the Netherlands, they were throwing poo at the Parliament. So, you know, at least these guys have done it a less smelly way. I think solidarity to them. They've done great.
I'd be pro-poo.
Pro-poo? You're pro-poo?
I work for the farmers.
Yeah, I am.
They work in it.
They
Why
work
not?
in it.
Yeah.
I actually, it's a nice country smell. You're out there, the manure hits, and you think, oh, I'm in the country now.
And did you notice they didn't block the entire road? They only blocked one lane, which I think is actually very suited.
Ethical protesting.
An ethical protest. Yeah. OK, good stuff. Go on, greatest Britain.
My greatest Brit has to be the RNLI 200th anniversary, set up in 1824, saved over 160,000 lives over 200 years, and 600 of them have sacrificed their lives to save others over the last 200 years. They get a lot of stick for the migrant boat crisis, but that has been forced upon them by the government. So I think we should also praise and respect they're volunteers. These people are amazing.
Well, I was surprised. I was again surprised by that, because I did think initially you'd come down on the idea that they have been acting as an Uber service for illegal immigrants. But I think, as you say, it's been forced upon them. Be interesting to see whether or not they include those lives saved as people in the small boats. Anyway, now, I'm very sorry. Despite you going to so much work to choose Greatest Britons tonight, I've decided to railroad over the top of you and just do one of my own. It's Charlie Peters, right? Now, the reason why it's Charlie Peters is because this guy decided to... Well, he didn't decide to. He caught somebody shoplifting, OK, in... I think a local branch of Tesco's or Sainsbury's, wherever it was, and he apprehended them, OK, and then waited for the police to arrive. They didn't, by the way.
What's that pile of stuff there?
That's the pile of stuff next. In this guy's bag included a woman's purse, as well as some tins of olive oil.
And some shampoo.
And some shampoo.
Products.
Yeah, but it's amazing because a load of people on the left decided that Charlie had done a bad thing and he was a grass, which did make me think, well, where's the feminism? Because a woman's purse.
Exactly.
So anyway, right, we have got very quickly your Union jackass.
So have you just won that Greatest Britain?
Well, Charlie Peters
I'm not entirely sure that was in the rules, but anyway, so my jackass is George Galloway, who, as we've just talked about. This is a guy, don't forget, this is a guy who bowed at the feet of Saddam Hussein. He said the October the 7th massacre, it was a concentration camp breakout. That's how he described. Hang on, I'm not finished. Rapes and murders of all the people who were killed. Anyway, go on. I've lost the will to live now.
My Union jackass, Amy LeMay, lame by name, lame by nature. 120 grand a year to be the night czar in London. You know, you've seen iconic locations like J.Y. Lake shutting under her. You know, Sacha Lord, the Greater Manchester nighttime advisor, he does it for free and he does a lot better of a job. Make Sacha Lord the UK's nighttime economy advisor. Amy Lame, loser.
As someone who used to...
Can I just point out which time he had there? You gave me like 3 seconds. He had a minute and a half there.
And yet here we are. Here we are.
Looking up for it now.
Just 3 seconds. Tangham Debonair for the MP, Shadow Culture Secretary for Labour. What a blueprint of what's going to come. Yes, she's like, Rule Britannia alienates a lot of Britons. Well, those Britons have definitely got a problem. It's not Rule Britannia that's the problem.
And what's yours, Patrick?
I can't remember who I went for. Tangham Debonair! Friend of the show, Tangham Debonair. All right, guys, thank you. I've had a wonderful time tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of fog forming overnight, wet weather's pushing its way northwards, and then tomorrow, well, a few showers, but for many it's going to be a fine day. Far from fine out there this evening though. Low pressure has been moving in, bringing some wet weather across the southwest, and these weather fronts continue to track north overnight. Nothing too heavy for most, but a damp, dank kind of night as it turns quite misty and murky, a few fog patches around. Touch of frost possible through parts of Wales and southwest England. Most towns and cities holding a couple of degrees above freezing, but nevertheless a chilly start, certainly across the Midlands. And it will be quite murky here. Some fog patches for central and eastern parts of England. Rain and drizzle over eastern England and lingering in northeast Scotland. Bit of a wet start for parts of Northern Ireland too. That rain will spread into western Scotland, but for a good chunk of the country it'll be a dry and a bright day once we've lost the morning mist and fog. But some heavy showers across the southeast. Temperatures here could reach 12 Celsius for most, 10 or 11 degrees. The wind's fairly light though, so probably feeling a touch warmer than today. A touch of frost returns though on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and Wednesday looking fairly grey again in eastern areas with a few light showers possible, and many western areas dry and bright with some decent spells of sunshine. Temperatures again where it's grey, 8 or 9, with a bit of sunshine, 11 or 12.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Sadiq Khan, 6.3 million on a virtue signal, load of lines. Why is he spending the people's money in this way? And why is nobody saying anything? I want to hear from Suzanne Hall, the potential Conservative candidate, or Howard Cox, the potential Reform candidate who could potentially take this off Sadiq Khan. Why are they not speaking? This is ridiculous.
Well, it was sprung on everybody. Did you know about that?
I didn't know about it.
Nobody knows. So they're spending this money. They're spending £6.3 million, and no one knew about it. Where's the press? Where are the public consultations? No one knew. I think it's a good idea to rename the train lines, because all these train lines There are like 4 of them, 6 of them, whatever, and they're all going all these different directions. And you tell someone to come, and you don't even know the name.
Yeah, but 6.3 million. Listen, if he wants to give me 6.3 million to come up with some virtue signalling lines, I'd like to know which advertising agency he employed to do this, how long it took him, and why he's even done it in the first place. Why has he done this?
He has done this. Look, with the virtue signalling, because he's part of Team World. He's Rishi Sunak. It's this whole concept is every inclusiveness. There is no country. Nobody's English. Our own history is bad. Not my history, but whatever. The English history is bad. And it's a denial of history. It's Orwellian or something. Yeah. Not that I know about.
I think it's an absolute absurdity that Sadiq Khan should be doing that. He's got a knife crime epidemic, a crime epidemic, people stealing watches off people walking down the street.
Yes.
You've got the burglary at an all-time high. London, a lot of people are put off by it. And this is what he spent £6.3 million on.
This could have been a bit
to speak as to why.
He doesn't need to speak. People need to speak out and say, well, why didn't we know about this? But the idea, can I say something to you, Nana? The idea is right. It's like, for example, take the Northern Line. You know, there are 6 Northern Lines.
6 Northern Lines.
6 different Northern Lines, maybe more now, because one goes from Mill Hill East to Mill Hill.
This was the overground he was...
It's 11 o'clock. You're with GB News. I'm Polly Middlehurst. The top story tonight. The government suffered a string of defeats to its flagship immigration policy, the Rwanda Bill, in the House of Lords this evening. Peers have been voting variously in favour of monitoring mechanisms which would ensure safeguards in the bill will be fully implemented and making sure the bill is fully compliant with international and domestic law. Nearly 50 amendments were put forward, with more being voted on Wednesday. The Prime Minister previously warned the Lords against frustrating the will of the people by hampering the passage of his Safety of Rwanda Bill. Meanwhile, a record 385 migrants crossed the English Channel today. That's the largest number on a single day this year. GB News understands a 7th small boat